Most people have heard of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, but what most people think it is, a creepy spellbook bound in human skin, used to summon demons or raise the dead, is completely wrong. That's Hollywood. That's the evil dead. That's not ancient Egypt. The actual Book of the Dead is one of the most misunderstood texts in human history, and once you understand what it really is, you'll see it as one of the most remarkable documents ever created. So let's clear this up. The Book of the Dead isn't a book at all. It's not a single text with a single author. The name itself is modern. The ancient Egyptians called it something else. The chapters of coming forth by day, or more poetically, the book of emerging forth into the light. It's a collection of magical spells. Some of them are hundreds of years older than the scrolls we have today, stretching back to the pyramid texts of the Old Kingdom and the coffin texts of the Middle Kingdom. And its purpose is simple: to help a dead person survive the afterlife. According to the British Museum's John Taylor, the Egyptians imagined the afterlife as a hazardous journey you had to make to reach paradise, and you'd need magical help along the way. The book was a practical guide to the next world, a survival manual for the soul. The ancient Egyptians believed that after death, you had to leave behind the green farmlands of Egypt and the waters of the Nile to travel into the underworld, or Duat, ruled by the god Osiris. They hoped the afterlife would be a perfect place called the Field of Reeds, which resembled the beautiful landscape they'd left behind. But first they had to cross the underworld, and it was a terrifying place, full of hostile spirits, poisonous snakes, burning fire, scalding water, and monsters. They believed you would be attacked by snakes, crocodiles, and insects, threats that were based on real dangers they knew in life, only much more frightening and dangerous. You'd have to pass through gates guarded by gods who would attack you with knives and snakes if you couldn't answer their questions correctly. And without the correct spells, you could be punished in horrific ways, put on a slaughter block, decapitated, or turned upside down, which meant your digestive process worked in reverse and you'd have to eat feces and drink urine forever. The worst fate of all was what they called a second death, where your spirit is killed and cannot come back, meaning you would have no afterlife at all. This was the ultimate terror for an ancient Egyptian. So the Book of the Dead wasn't a statement of faith, it wasn't doctrine, it was practical. Some spells ensured that you could control your body after death, that you wouldn't lose your head or your heart, that your body wouldn't decay, that you could breathe air, drink water, and eat food. Other spells protected you from the monsters and demons you'd encounter. Still others helped you to be reborn. The book was a collection of roughly 200 individual spells or chapters, but no single copy ever contained all of them. Wealthy Egyptians could commission their own scrolls, choosing the spells they believed would be most useful. It was like a custom-made survival guide for your soul. These were expensive objects, so they were usually made only for high-status people, royalty, wealthy officials, scribes. A scroll might be anywhere from a few feet to over 130 feet long. Scribes wrote the text in hieroglyphs, often from left to right, in columns of black and red ink. The illustrations, or vignettes, were often lavish and colorful, some even used gold leaf. A rich person could buy a ready-made papyrus with blank spaces for their name, or they could spend a bit more and choose exactly which spells they wanted. The most famous scene in the Book of the Dead is spell 125, the weighing of the heart. It's first known from the reign of the female pharaoh Hatshepsut around 1475 BCE. This was the final judgment. Your heart, the seat of your soul, was placed on a scale and weighed against the feather of truth, the symbol of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. The jackal-headed god Anubis did the weighing. The ibis-headed god Thoth recorded the result. If your heart balanced on the scale, you passed the test. If it was heavy with sin, the monstrous devourer would devour you, a crocodile-like creature known as Ammit. If you failed, your soul was annihilated. But if you passed, the god Osiris would welcome you into the afterlife, and you'd enter a perfect world of paradise known as the Field of Reeds. The Book of the Dead is also significant because of its incredible cultural reach. Some scholars believe that portions of the Book of the Dead are direct ancestors of parts of the Old Testament. Some archaeologists have argued that Moses may have read and carried a copy with him when he fled Egypt. The parallels between the Egyptian text and later religious traditions are profound, from the concept of a final judgment to the idea of a soul's journey after death. But it's important to be careful with that claim. The Book of the Dead did influence surrounding cultures, and it's one of the oldest documents of human faith in the immortality of the soul. But whether it directly influenced the Old Testament is still debated. Some scholars see clear parallels, others caution against oversimplifying. One more thing, a common claim about the Book of the Dead is that it democratized the afterlife, that it opened it up to everyone, not just the wealthy. That theory has been the standard interpretation for decades, but it's not entirely accurate. Funerary rituals existed long before the Book of the Dead, and scholars now argue that most Egyptians, not just royalty, had access to equivalent practices from very early times. The Book of the Dead didn't democratize the afterlife, it just recorded what many Egyptians already believed. The Book of the Dead is not a demonic spellbook. It is a remarkably human document. It shows us how people faced the most terrifying mystery of all, death, with preparation, ritual, and hope. They believed they could travel through the darkness of the underworld and emerge into the light of a new existence. The ancient Egyptians did not worship death, they prepared for it. They wrote a book to help the dead navigate their way to life. And in that sense, the Book of the Dead is not about death at all. It's about survival. It's about the refusal to disappear. It's about coming forth by day.